Hello everyone, we're going over the Tapestry Revised, Adjusted, Rebalanced Civilization Pack. This pack contains new versions of 31 civilization mats from the Tapestry core game, Plans, Employs, Arts, and Architecture. These revisions are final. They were play-tested a lot. And there may be a separate pack in the future for Fantasies and Futures, but for now those are left as they are. There is also revised versions of the wetland and the desert playmats, which you can see they've just shifted things around and rebalanced them a little bit to keep them in line with the other four. So the wetland and the desert, they're all a little different. You could pause and have a look at those. Another handy new thing in this is the civilization complexity from low, medium, and high. All the new civilizations will show you what complexity there are, but there's also this handy card just to look over. And this is really handy if you're playing with a new player, or maybe you're just in the mood for a simpler civ than a brain burner one. We're going to go through these new ones one by one, and I'll just show you all the differences. One thing I did want to note, though, is this important: keep the original versions of your Historians, Islanders, and Mystics civs, because they will be used for the solo campaign, Fate of Atlantis, from Plans Employs. Okay, let's get into these. First, we'll start with the Advisors, which is a pretty big change. With the old version of the Advisors, you were gaining points for your Tapestry cards, controlling this size of your Tapestry deck a little bit, and when your opponents gain Tapestry cards during their advancement turns, you were able to give them some of yours and redraw. Also, gaining points if you gain this during the middle of the game. The new version is quite a bit different and interesting. In the new version, you place player tokens on your opponent's space during your income turns. Space meaning they're empty tapestry spaces. And whenever your opponent plays a tapestry card on one of those spaces, they give you your token back and show you their card. If it's a when played card and you agree they can play it, then they play the card and you gain the benefit after them. If you don't agree for them to play it, or they selected a card that isn't a when played, you choose a when played tapestry card from your hand that they may play. If they play it, it's just like before, you gain the benefit of the card after they do. If you don't have any when played cards, or they disagree and proceed to play the card they originally chose from their hand, you gain a whole bunch of stuff: a resource, tech card, tapestry card, and a territory tile. Also, if you gain this civilization in the middle of the game, you may choose to discard it and gain another, or place up to 2 player tokens on spaces that do not have them on your opponent's income mats. So that one's quite a bit different. It is a 3 complexity, which I can see why, takes some planning. So that is the Advisors. Moving on next, we have the Alchemists, another one that is quite a bit different. The old Alchemists being a push your luck game. Income turns 2 to 5, you rolled the science die, and you kept track of it with tokens. If you ever double rolled anything, you would bust and only gain a wild resource. Otherwise, when you chose to stop, you could advance on one of the techs you rolled and not gain the benefits of the bonuses, but help you along on those tracks. And you would get 5 points if this ever bounced off the end of a track. The new version of the Alchemists isn't to push your luck anymore. Now they are creating stable, potent elixirs. So you roll all 3 dice. You may re-roll them once. You select one to place on this mat. Then you'll roll the 2 that are left and select one to place on this mat with some re-rolling. Then 3, you gain the benefits of the dice on the mat noted below. So science die, you advance on the track. Red conquer, you gain double the victory points for it. In Black Conquer, you get different benefits based on the symbols showing. So instead of a push your luck, it's kind of a random dice rolling mechanic. Quite a bit different. The Alchemists is a 2 complexity, as you can see here. And yeah, the new ones look fun as well. Then we have the Aliens. The Aliens are mostly the same. Only really difference with the Aliens is that you don't have to pay a resource to discard one from your mat. So the Alien's a little bit of a buff. You don't have to pay resources if you are discarding a space tile from the mat this turn. The Aliens from Plans and Ploys, and they are a 1 complexity civ. So we've had one of each so far. Okay, then we have the Architects. Their puzzle is mostly the same. Completing districts. If all the income buildings are the same, you get an extra resource. If with the lines for scoring your capital city, if all the income buildings are the same, you get double points. The one difference is now that when you start the game with the Architects, you place a player token per opponent in your capital city to create more impassable plots, making it a little easier for you to achieve their goal and get the double resources and fill up that board. So they got a little bit of a buff. They are a high complexity civ, which makes sense. It's a tough puzzle. But yeah, mostly the same for the Architects. Then we have the Artifice factions added in here just so I could show off the complexity. They're on the card here instead of the civ mats, and the Artificers are a 2 complexity. So that's what I'll just be doing with the Fantasies and Futures, sharing their complexity. So then we have the Celestials as well, which are a 2 complexity. The Celestials from Fantasies and Futures as well. And you can pause and read those if you want. I'm only really going over the changes. Next we have the Collectors. The Collectors proudly display a variety of objects and buildings. I like to think of it as a museum. The old version of the Collectors was when you gain one of the following things in this grid, you would stash it on this card and gain a wild resource. At the end of the game, gaining VP for how many different you had collected. They have gotten a little bit of a buff, and the 3 harder things to stash give you 2 resources now instead of 1. Another change also is when you gain this in the middle of the game, you may place a Tapestry card, a territory tile from your supply mat. You don't gain the benefit, but you'll get that for the victory points at the end of the game. The Collectors are a 2 complexity, or sorry, I should say a medium complexity civ. So we have the Craftsmen, which the Craftsmen also just have a minor change here. The Craftsmen, of course, are putting the income buildings to build their giant statue. You can put them here instead of your capital city. You build from the bottom up, collecting the resources covered. The big change to this is just if you gain them in the middle of the game, you get to start partway up on this building based on what era you gained it in. So if you gain them in era 3, you can start your tokens partway up. You don't gain the benefits, but then you'll be able to continue from like you normally would. That's the Craftsmen. They are a 1 complexity or a low complexity, simple one to play as. Then we have the Elder Ones, another Fantasies and Futures. You can pause if you wanted to read them, and they are a 3 complexity, which is true for, I feel like, a bunch of Fantasies and Futures. There are some fun ones, but some toughies. Makes sense with the third expansion. After the elder ones, we have the Entertainers. Let's let my camera focus. The Entertainers are mostly the same. One of the differences, though, is the old version. Oh, I should explain them. They start with a player token on the far left, and each income turn, you can move right and collect the benefits as you go. One of the big differences is before it was income turns 2 to 5. Now it's income turns 1 to 4, which is a slight buff. It gets you those bonuses a bit earlier. And yeah, all the other spaces look the same. That's just the small difference. They are a 2 complexity, a medium complexity civilization. Then we have the Feyfolk, another Fantasies and Futures one. I'm just sharing it's a 3 complexity, and you may go ahead and read them if you want. These ones are pretty fun. Ring around the rosy type benefits. Beautiful art. Next we have the Futurists, which is one I was always too scared to play in Tapestry, but I love the idea of them. The old version of the Futurists, you started on spot 4 of every track, and you gained 1 of each resource to make up for that because you're suddenly in the expensive Era 2 actions. I found that scary, missing a lot of their income buildings. The new version is the same idea thematically, but instead you pick 2 tracks to move up on, and you take 2 resources. So instead of 4 tracks and 4, it's 2 and 2. One thing that really intrigues me about them now is every time you play them can be different because you're going to pick 2 different tracks than maybe the last time you did. The Futurists are a 3 complexity, which I think is spot on. Okay, next we have the Gamblers, which is another simple change. So the Gamblers used to be when you, at the end of your first income turn, you would reveal 3 Tapestry cards, and then play one with a when played over Maker of Fire, resolving its ability. Or, if you revealed none you could play, then you would keep one of those cards and discard the rest. Income turns 2 to 4, you would reveal 3, play one with a when played on top of the current era, resolve it, and then, again, if you couldn't play any, you would add 1 to your hand. You would then proceed to play the normal Tapestry card from your era on top of that one. They've had a little bit of a nerf here because instead of revealing 3 Tapestry cards for each of these steps, it has been changed to 2 now. The other change is if you gain them in the middle of the game, you may immediately follow the instructions on the previous paragraph, which means drawing them and playing one if you can, putting one in your hand if not. The Gamblers are a 1 complexity. It's just a little bit of a gambling mini game with Tapestry cards each time you take an income turn. Then we have the Genies. The Genies is just another Fantasies and Futures where I'm going to show off the complexity for you. The Genies are a 1 complexity. They are just about granting wishes of other players. Next we have the Heralds. So the old version of the Heralds, you would start with 4 player tokens here. At the end of your first income turn, you would play a Tapestry card on top of Maker of Fire, giving you like an extra Tapestry card for the game. At the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, you could put one of these 4 tokens on any when played Tapestry card, yours or your opponent's, and gain the benefits of that card. The new version of Heralds has you instead at setup drawing and discarding Tapestry cards until you find a when played or continuous card, and then place it over the Maker of Fire. This time not gaining the benefit, the upside to this is it's one of your choices later for when you may place one player token on any of those cards when played, or continuous now. The heralds may not play the Renaissance card over the Maker of Fire. The heralds are a low complexity, and the new change seems pretty good. The old version of the heralds was one of my favorites to play as. Moving on to the historians. The historians want to witness the achievements of other civilizations. You start with these squares covered, and then that beginnings of income turns 2 to 5. You could discard a territory tile from your supply to give one of these tokens to any opponent. This represents sending your historian to them. Whenever the opponents with your tokens gain a landmark, you would gain all the exposed benefits. And if you gain this in the middle of the game, you would give all 4 away. Now the change, one of them is they changed the icons, rebalanced the actual bonuses you get. The other change is you start with a territory, and at the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, or 1 to 4, 2 to 5 in a 1, 2, 3 player game, or 1 to 4 in a 4 to 5 player game. So this has been balanced based on player count as well. You would discard a territory tile to give them the tokens, and it works the same way with the historians gaining all the exposed benefits when your opponents gained a landmark. So the symbols are different. You start with a territory tile this time. Then we have here the Illuminati. You're free to pause and read about their abilities. I'm just showing off, of course. The Illuminati are a 2 complexity Fantasies and Futures civilization. Then we have the Infiltrators. The Infiltrators may, at income turns 2 to 5, do one of the following. Place outposts on territories with exactly 1 opponent and nothing else. This is not them conquering because they're infiltrating. Both outposts remain upright. You gain the benefit of the territory if there is any, and it cannot be conquered now because it still follows that 2 outpost rule. You can also play a player token on an opponent's capital city and gain 1 for each outpost they have yet to play. And then whenever you draw a new civilization, you draw 3 and keep 1. Discard the others, which is a cool power. And that really comes into play because if you put 3 player tokens on another opponent's capital city, you gain a new civilization. So you've fully infiltrated someone and you move on to a new civ. So this plays mostly the same, except some of the changes is you start with a player token on each player's capital city instead of the star resource. So this helps you draw new civs sooner. You only have to do it twice total. Also, if you gain this in the middle of the game, you give an opponent a player token in addition to the starting one. So then you would only have to put 1 more on to go with the 2 to get new civilizations. The Infiltrators are a medium complexity that have just gotten a slate buff. Next we have here the Inventors, one of my favorite factions from the core game. This is one of the factions here where I don't think there's any actual gameplay change, just a bit of a graphic change on the cards. They, at the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, move a token here from here to any tech card, yours or an opponent's. That card upgrades, and then it ignores top row prerequisites with that token on it. And if it's opponent's card, you gain the benefits after they do. So no stealing landmarks or anything. They would take the only landmark. And then if it's your own card, you gain the benefits as normal. Whenever an opponent's tech card is upgraded to the top row that has your token on it, you are able to put it in your bottom row, which is really good for scoring, even if you don't upgrade them again. The only difference really seems to be that instead of placing these 4 here, you just keep them in your supply, but that's no gameplay change. There's no way to get more or less than the 4 you place from income turns 2 to 5. The Inventors are a low complexity civilization. Then we have the Islanders. The Islanders have their own little island that you can explore with. At the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, you may explore one of the hexes on this mat, placing a territory here, gaining the exploration benefit and points. These hexes cannot be conquered. They're just for exploring. It's your own personal island. And you gain 4 points for each one at the end of the game. That only contains water on the edge, just to thematically score you more if it's an isolated island. Then for the differences for the Islanders, it is, instead of income turns 2 to 5, now it's 1 to 5, giving you an extra turn to place them. And also, it's nice, you start with 4 territories in your supply, so there is more to choose from. Also, hexes that you explore on advancing turns on the board, like exploration actions, these tiles can place here as well. So that means that you can fill up all 6 around it. So you're not going to want to place more than 1, because you're going to get to place 5 for free there. And then still the additional 4 per. So you'll be able to fully fill this island. If you gain this civ in the middle of the game, you may place up to 4 territory tiles on it. You don't get the exploration benefits, but it would be good for those 4 points each at the end of the game. The Islanders is a low complexity civ. Then we have the Isolationists. The Isolationists, they just want to be left alone. When you conquer an empty territory, you may place one of these tokens that you start with here on that territory in addition to your outpost. And that means there's 2 things on that territory. Prevents it from being conquered. You get a resource for it. You get to be left alone. And they also have a pretty fun little mini endgame scoring where you score points for the largest connected landmass of the same terrain type. So if you connect a big grassland type, you can score quite a bit of points. So one of the changes to the Isolationists is another one of those player count changes. This dotted line 5th one here lets you start with 1 extra in a 4 to 5 player game, and you start with 2 territories as well, territory tiles as well, for the Isolationists. Scoring seems to be the same. They are a medium complexity civilization from the base game. Then we have the Leaders. The Leaders are a simple one. At the start of your income turns 2 to 5, you place a player token on an uncovered leader square on this mat. Advance for free on the corresponding track, gaining the benefit. Note you don't gain the bonus. Their only change is the arts track has been added as a choice. So if you have that expansion, you're able to take advantage of that. If you don't have that expansion, you could just ignore that square and do the other 4, because you're still only going to be able to do 4 of them. So you're not missing out on a mount if you don't have that expansion. The Leaders are a low complexity. They're pretty simple. You just pick one, get the bonus. Then we have the Merfolk here, another Fantasies and Futures one that I just wanted to show off that they are 2 complexity here. They have a really interesting power. It's quite a bit to read. Again, I'm not going over the Fantasies and Futures ones, but they're quite fun. I think Carol really enjoyed the Merfolk. Then we have the Merrymakers. So the old version of the Merrymakers, you would start with player tokens on the bottom here, and on income turns 2 to 5, you would select one to advance up and gain all these bonuses. So you had to choose. You had to choose between all the benefits. You're not going to get them all. The new version of the Merrymakers, you start with 2 tokens on this 3x3 grid instead. And at each income turn, you must move each of those orthogonally adjacent and gain the resulting benefit. So it's 2 things each turn, which isn't necessarily more because some of these had 2 on it. But it's a little puzzle of wandering around this little board collecting stuff. They are a low complexity civ, just gaining little bonuses at the end of each era. Then we have the Militants. The Militants are one of those civs that are playing pretty much the same, which is you put your outposts over all these resources, and as you conquer from the left to the right, you choose either the top or bottom row, and you uncover them, giving you like an income for each income turn. You get everything that's uncovered. The new version of the Militants, you can see, has different points, some different symbols, and you also start with 2 of your player tokens on your home base instead of outposts, so that you're able to conquer 2 extra times. You'll have more outposts than anyone else. At the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, you still get all the exposed benefits. One difference being this one has an asterisk, this conquer action. You take that last after all the other exposed benefits are gained. If you gain this civ middle of the game, you just place your remaining outposts on here. You get to choose how they're placed. The Militants is a low complexity. You kind of know the direction you're going. If you have them, you're going to be conquering a lot. Okay, next we have the Mystics, one of the ones with a huge change. The old version of the Mystics was a bit of a guessing game. You had these 4 tracks, and you would try to guess where you'll end at the end of the game for 10 points each. So if you think you're going to get 5 tech cards, you'd put your cube there. And when you reached that 5, you would get a wild resource. And then if you stayed on that 5, 10 points at the end of the game. What some people would do is just guess really low and instead see its power as the 4 resources really fast. And they would just forego the points and earn more points off the resources. The new one, which is totally different, they have their own private... Sorry, my camera freezes if y'all are wondering. They have their own private deck of 8 Tapestry cards they draw from. They can look through them before shuffling them, so you can make a plan of what's in your private deck. And then you would draw some, and whenever you gain a Tapestry card in the game, you would draw from your private deck, and you would discard to your private deck. If your deck ever empties, you would reshuffle it, so you would see some of the ones you passed up on. And on income turns 2 to 4, you would gain the top card of the public deck, discard your entire hand of Tapestry cards to your discard pile. Based on how many you discarded, you would do these different benefits. So if you discard 2, choose one of these. 4, choose 2 of these, noting that this removes it from your income mat, but you don't place it in your capital city. And then if you manage to get 6 cards in an era, you would choose 3 different of these, and they're better versions, like conquer both rewards, invent and upgrade it, and actually place this in your capital city. So these ones I can't wait to try. They have a whole little deck building game that seems quite fun, and of course because of that they are a high complexity. They're not for beginners. You really gotta know the game, I feel like, to make the use of all the Tapestry cards you're dealing with. Then we have the Nomads. They want to expand on the board instead of in their capital city. They work mostly the same now, except if you gain this civ in the middle of the game, you can gain an income building of the type you have the least of. If tied, you get to choose and place it as indicated above, which can be really nice to clear off one of those rows, get a nicer bonus. So that's the Nomads. They are a 3 complexity civ. It's tough to know when to put stuff on the world map board or into your capital city to get the most points. And then we have the Psionics. The Psionics are just one of the Fantasies and Futures where I'm showing off their complexities. They are deemed a 2 complexity, and give them a read there, a pause it if you want to. They're, I think, the first Fantasies and Futures I played as, and I really liked them. Then we have the Recyclers. The Recyclers are all about the tech cards. They take used technology and make it new again. Sometimes some of these differences I should have pointed out earlier is when it's just flavor text about the civ, it's been put in italics above, little description of what they are, separating it from the rules. They start the game by gaining 3 tech cards and choosing to keep 1, placing it in the bottom row, noting you can't upgrade it during your first income turn because normally you wouldn't have a tech card. Then at the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, you may upgrade a tech card. This is in addition to the standard upgrade during those turns, so they were able to upgrade twice. They were also able to upgrade from the top row back down to the bottom, recycling the card and gaining victory points when they do that. So now, the big difference is instead of upgrading a tech card, you gain the top card of the tech discard pile. So when you're playing with the Recyclers, you gotta run a tight discard pile. Make sure there's order integrity for the discard. Then you may upgrade the tech card. So they get to get a free one from the top of the discard. When gaining a tech card, sorry, I should have said this for both, you may choose from the top of the tech discard pile. So slight buff for the Recyclers. They are a medium complexity civ. Okay, then we have the Relentless. The Relentless play pretty similarly. The only difference is that if you gain them in the middle of the game, you basically get to take a free 4 token action, or it does say you may discard them, so you could go for a 5 if the next turn you placed one. The Relentless are a high complexity civilization. Then we have the Renegades. The Renegades have their own little advancement track that they get to work from. Anytime you are advancing on a track that you would gain the benefit, you may choose to ignore the benefit and the bonus, if there is one, to advance on your little track and gain these benefits instead. This is the only way to advance on this track, so if you earn something that lets you move on a track, it doesn't apply here. It doesn't count for achievements or anything. The old version of this said reaching towards the end of this track counts as the end of track achievement. The new version of the Renegades, you can see this just a graphic change from here, is mostly the same, except they've taken out this reaching the end of track counts as the achievement, and they've added if you gain this achievement in this civilization in the middle of the game, place a player token in a tier that matches a tier on the board containing one of your player tokens. So as far as you are in the game, you can start semi down this track with the Renegades. They are a medium complexity civilization. Then we have moving on to the Riverfolk. So the Riverfolk, they can build on those impassable plots in your capital city. The old version says 4 points per district in your capital city with at least 2 impassable plots. You start with that bonus. And then you may place buildings on impassable plots of land to complete rows, columns, and all that. Whenever you cover the last impassable plot in a district, gain 1 resource. This benefit doesn't apply in districts with no impassable plots. So if there are no red dots and you cover all 9, that's just the same as usual. The old version of Riverfolk, on your final income turn, you lost a point per visible impassable plot. So that was saying you really had to fill them. The new version of Riverfolk, they get a little bit of a buff to how many points you get for the starting impassable plots. Also, this is saying you can't use it with the Cloud City capital city mat. And they've taken out this losing points per impassable plot. So mechanics the same, just a little points buff for the Riverfolk, which are a medium complexity civilization from plans and ploys. Then we are moving on to the Spies. The Spies is another one that plays the same, really, just they've balanced the benefits. So at the beginning of income turns 2 to 5, you may place a player token on one of the unselected options here to gain the benefit from a neighboring player of your choice. If you do, you may request to see the chosen neighbor's hand of Tapestry cards. They have to show it to you. The differences they changed is they took the space tile off this one, so the gain of benefit on a territory's neighbor or space tile is now just territory tile. And then the tech one used to be gain the benefit of a neighbor's tech card matching its current row. Now it is gain the circle benefit of a neighbor's tech card regardless of where it currently is. So that's the Spies. They are a high complexity civilization. Okay, next we have the Chosen, another one that has changed quite a bit. The old version of the Chosen, starting at income turns 2 to 5, you would, for each advancement track you've completed, or where there were no further advancement tracks than yours, you would get 1 point per opponent. And then for each achievement you've earned, those 3 achievements on the main board, you would gain a resource. Per achievement completed, if it was your final income turn, you would gain 5 per achievement. Now the Chosen are completely different. They have their own track here. You start with a player token on the left of this track, and when you earn any achievement, you would advance the token to gain either the benefit or you could choose for the 5 victory points. They also, which is really fun, have their own set of 6 achievements that they can complete at any time, in addition to the other 3, to move along on these boards. So things like having 4 tapestry cards, 4 of each resource, territory tiles or tech cards, or income buildings, or landmarks. So they're all just have 4 of each thing. And then, if you gain the civ in the middle of the game, account for the achievements you've already earned and move yourself up on the track accordingly, gaining at most 2 of the benefits. So you can zip along it, pick 2 things on the way, and then keep going with it. Chosen are a medium complexity from the core game. Then we have the Tinkerers. The Tinkerers are one that have just been tinkered with. They have just some small changes here. The Tinkerers, the old version, each opponent gained a tech card at the start of the game, so they've taken that out. You don't give your opponents free tech cards anymore. But their main mechanic, you may place a player token on income turns 2 to 5 on one of the unselected options and act accordingly. So 4 different powers, basically, and some of them have been changed a little bit. This first one, choose one of your advancement tokens, gain resources equal to the cost of advancing into it. That's the same. Down here, the one that you regress 3 spaces on and gain the It used to be you may gain the benefit and pay to gain the bonus. Now you may gain the benefit but not the bonus. Right here, advancing on any track to match the closest opponent who is ahead of you. Do not gain the benefit or the bonus. The old version was you may gain the benefit but not the bonus. And then the final one, advance to the next bonus on any track and gain that bonus for free. Do not gain any landmarks you pass. That's the same. That one is a high complexity civilization. I feel like I've never played as the Tinkerers. I feel like I would donk it up. They seem like a toughie. Then we have the Traders. This is the last one from the core game going over. The Traders had these 4 spots where you place tokens, and on income turns 2 to 4, you may place one of the tokens on any territory in the map, matching one of these descriptions. And it was empty territories, you got points for adjacent ones with opponents nearby, showing you're trading with them. Territories with one's opponent outpost, you could put it on there and gain the benefit, and then stop it from being conquered. The new version of the Traders, they start with 2 territories, and they have different options to choose from. The first 2 options must have a territory tile, but that's nice, you start with 2. And if you place a player token on a territory with exactly 1 opponent outpost, you would give them a territory tile, and then you both gain the benefit on the traded territory tile and the benefit on which you just placed a player token. The opponent controls the territory. Or if you choose to gain an income building and place it toppled on a territory with 1 opponent outpost and nothing else, you would give them a territory tile. Both of you and your opponent gain the benefit revealed by the income building, so revealed off your income mat, whether it's a resource or scoring. And the opponent gets to control the territory. Finally, if you choose, you can place a token on a territory you control with 1 outpost and nothing else, gaining a wild resource or 5 points. Then rolling the black conquer die and gaining the result. If you do this, each of your opponents gets a territory tile, though. So, same idea with the Traders, kinda, but they've totally revamped how it works, making me interesting to try it. Even just explaining it, I feel like this will be a good one to play and see how it plays out. They are a medium complexity from the core game. We have the Treasure Hunters next. The Treasure Hunters start with 4 player tokens. Here, they used to gain 2 territory tiles. It looks like that's been taken away. And at income turns 2 to 5, you may place a player token from here on an empty territory adjacent to a territory you control, and then get the listed benefits. So if you do that with a desert, you used to gain 1 resource, then roll the black conquer die twice and gain 1 benefit of your choice. They've changed it to roll it up to 2 times and gain the benefit of the final roll. So if you choose to roll again, then you're stuck with the second thing. And that's the same with the grassland. They changed it from twice to final roll for rolling the science die up to 2 times. The mountain, gain the resource, then roll the conquer die and gain both benefits is the same. The forest, gain resource and roll the red die twice and gain both benefits is the same. Territories, this is a change and it's in bold. Territories controlled by one of your opponent's player tokens can be conquered. This is considered a topple of your token. If you gain this civ in the middle of the game, you can discard it and draw another. One thing to note on that, some people get tripped up, it says may. You get to choose if you want it or not. They are a medium complexity civilization. Next we have the urban planners. So one thing I want to note about the urban planners is this is the only civ that can't be used if you just own the base game of Tapestry from this pack. Next we have the urban planners, and one thing I want to note about the urban planners, they're the only civ from this pack of 31 that you can't just use the core game of Tapestry for. You need to have those landmark cards that come in Plans and Ploys or Arts and Architecture. For the urban planners, after everyone has chosen landmark cards at the game start, or when you gain urban planners, choose an additional card from the landmark deck. If no cards are available, you may discard this civ and draw a different one. When you gain a landmark, you may place it on this card. If you do, you may place it in your capital city in a future turn. So the big change here is if you place, with the new version, if you place 2+ landmarks at the same time, you also gain a resource and a tapestry card. So you're rewarded for saving them up, but then the downside is they're not on your capital mat, scoring points and other resources. During your final income turn, according to this chart below, which is the same on both, it hasn't been changed, score your largest group of connected landmarks in your capital city. So a big city of landmarks you're trying to make. You get 7 of them touching 49 points. And then another change, if you gain the civ in the middle of the game, also gain a landmark card. If you've already completed this landmark card's goal, you may gain the landmark right away. If no landmark cards are available, based on player count, if you're using them up, you may discard this mat and draw another. They are a high complexity civ from Arts and Architecture, and I just want to reiterate, you need to have landmark cards to play this civ. So if you are buying this revised pack, this is the one you need to take out if you don't have the proper expansions for it. Okay, next we have the Utilitarians. The Utilitarians start with a Tier 2 landmark. In the old version, you placed it in your capital city right away. In the new version, at the beginning of your second income turn, you place it in your capital city. They also have these list of the different landmarks from Tier 1 and 2 here. And you start with 2 player tokens here. One on that first landmark you selected. And then the second, after you gain a landmark in this list, you may place or move one of the player tokens on this mat to that landmark's name and activate the corresponding ability. So basically you're going to have 2 abilities based on what landmarks you've earned, and they'll be different either based on the latest ones you've unlocked, or you'll just keep it camped on 2 you really like. So if you've unlocked the Forge, then whenever you upgrade a tech card to the top row, also gain points. It looks like all these benefits are the same. The big change was that you have to wait a bit to place that free landmark into your capital city. Also, just to note that if you gain this in the middle of the game, you don't have to keep it. You may choose to discard it and draw another, but if you do keep it, you can place 2 player tokens next to corresponding landmarks if you have them. So that's kind of neat, actually. You don't have to keep it, but if you do, there is still bonuses. It is a 3 complexity from Plans and Ploys, and that's the last main one we're going over, because the last 2 here are just Refolk and Werefolk from Fantasies and Futures. Just have Werefolk from Fantasies and Futures. Again, I just had these in here to show off their complexity and so that you could pause and read them if you wish. The Werefolk, oops, they skipped a line. They're 2 complexity from Fantasy Futures, and then Wefolk, which I meant to show first, is also 2 complexity from Fantasies and Futures. I should be clear, I had these all mixed in alphabetically. I'll share it at the start of the video as well. But this comes with none of the Fantasies and Futures civs, just the 31 from the core game, Plans and Ploys, and Arts and Architecture. We also, on the other side of this civilization complexity, is just a card showing you some landmarks and the spaces they take up. Yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. As I went over the revised, adjusted, rebalanced civilization pack. I want to remind everyone to keep the original versions of Historians, Islanders, and Mystics so that you can use them in the solo campaign, Fates of Atlantis. They will also show off which civs are excluded from solo play, the complexities, and indicating that it is a revised mat. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.